Right.
Well, gosh, there's new faces here, but then there's Kathy, who I've known for what now, about,
Oh, about 100 years.
I don't think 100 years, maybe 20, might be close to 20. Anyway, my name is Debbie. I'm a watercolor artist, and I've been doing watercolors for about 40 years. And I love it. During COVID, I have to admit, I didn't paint much. You would think being stuck in your house that that's what you would do, but I didn't. Instead, I wrote a book, so that was fun to do. But over the last year or so, the last few months, I've really enjoyed kind of a renaissance of getting back into doing the artwork and doing the watercolor and really enjoying it again. I can't say that I missed teaching during COVID. It was kind of nice to have that break. It was like being on an extended vacation. But I'm definitely getting back into that and enjoying the prospect of teaching again. So, I'm going to show you my palette. And to be honest, I probably only use maybe 8 colors out of this on a regular basis, but it's kind of fun to have them all there, and if I do need them, they're there. I used to be a pretty traditional person that depended on maybe 1 or 2 brands exclusively, but I don't anymore. Now I just get what I can get and use them. There are certain brands, certain colors, certain hues that I like in certain brands. The cerulean blue that I use is a Daniel Smith, and it's called Cerulean Blue Genuine, and it's still made from the original pigments, and it's got a nice granulating effect. But I use a lot of different ones. The cores are kind of fun. It's a new brand. I use a lot of, what's the Grumbacher one? The other one. Can't remember, but it uses a honey binder in it. And those are nice because they stay moist. They're not great for Yupo because, how many of you are familiar with Yupo paper?
Yeah.
So you don't want to use, it'll come to me, I'm sure, grams.
Grams.
The
Yeah.
grams have a honey base and so they stay moist, and you don't want to use those on Yupo because they don't dry very well. So today I'm working on Fabriano Artistico paper. It's my favorite paper. It's a cold press. It's 140 pound. And I usually use the bright white. It just adds a little extra sparkle. The colors are a little bit more vibrant. If you have any questions, please.
What was the name of the paper that you used? The truck went by, I missed you.
Oh, it's Fabriano
Fabiano, oh, thanks.
Artistico.
Artistico.
Yeah, and it's the 100% rag. Because they do make student grades that are mixture of cellulose and cotton. But I just stick with the cotton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's gone up in price. It used to be through Jerry's Artorama, you could get 10 sheets for $40. Now it's $69 for 10 sheets.
Yeah.
Still not as bad as the Arches and some other brands. My favorite brushes are some that I don't even have with me today because they've all, I've had to toss them because they're old. And I am going to replenish my brush supply. Brushes are very important when you're watercoloring. I like a brush that has a good spring to it. I like a brush that holds water. This is a Princeton, which is actually kind of a student grade, but it's okay. They work. I don't know why Central Art Supply over in Medford do not carry the ones that I like. How dare they? You know, but Jerry's does, and I fully intend to order. And they're reasonably priced for, you know, a synthetic blend. And they have really good spring and good points to them. This is probably one of my more expensive brushes, and I was not happy with the way the point, this, you know, it just kind of disintegrated, which is unfortunate when you pay a lot of money for a brush. So it's one of those brushes that you see on YouTube, people are always touting. It's an Escoda Prado, and I'm not that impressed. So the ones that I really like are the Richardson 9000 series.
Oh, yes.
They're excellent. And then what I basically use is a flat when I'm doing a lot of washes. This brush is, let's see, I bought it in '73. And it is a Grumbacher Kolinsky Sable.
I get closer to see the 73 brush.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, yeah,
Right now, they just.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're having it.
So
Do they still, if you bought another one just now, would it be as good as that one?
it would still be a Kolinsky, but they're probably around $600 or $700 a brush
Oh.
now. I paid $50
Yeah,
for this.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, you know, and I'm not a big one for using Kolinsky anymore. They make such excellent blends now, or even synthetics, that you really don't need to have some poor little weasel sacrifice its life to give you tail hairs, you know. So, but this has been a wonderful brush, and it will probably, I'm going to ask that it be put in my grave with me. It'll go in my grave. So, and then of course, since we're doing a tree, I use a liner brush quite a bit. And these are just really inexpensive little liner brushes they're black, black gold by Dynasty brushes. And they're good for what they are. And again, they don't last forever, but when you pay $3 or $4 for a brush, you can afford to replace it. Yeah. And let's see, I think this one is
Yeah, they go back there.
this is a Princeton also. There's different levels of Princetons, so, and this one, well, anyway, so that's my set of brushes that I'm using today. A flat, a large round, small round. Probably won't use that one. This is just in case. This is a number 8, and they're all different. So this is an 8, and this is an 8, and there's a difference in the size. So you can't always go by the size of a brush. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to attempt to do a replica of this. To be honest, it'll never turn out the same. You can't duplicate watercolors. You just can never get them to work the same the second time. And that's what's fun about them. And you have to be kind of open to changes like that. This was a photograph that I took at Rough and Ready Botanical Wayside. It was sunset, almost, actually the sun was pretty much gone. It was really the latest time of day just before the sun was disappeared. And there was this beautiful one Jeffrey pine that was a silhouette against that sky. And there were just enough clouds in the sky to make it dramatic. And I've wanted to paint it, but I've kind of had a rule all my life to not do sunsets because they always, to me, seem to come off looking garish. And why try to improve on something like a photograph that, you know, when you can see a photograph of a sunset and you know that's a photograph of a sunset. When you look at something and then try to paint it, I think it becomes unbelievable to a point. So anyway, I put this on Facebook and somebody said, "Oh, that's scary, it reminds me of the forest fires." I told him, I said, I can see that, but it's really honestly just a sunset. So. But it's open for interpretation, obviously, you know. And I guess if somebody has lived, like we've all dealt with forest fires over the last, 5 or 6 years. So I can see where somebody might be a little traumatized. So are there any questions before I start? Okay. So this is an 11 by 14 or 15. It's a quarter sheet from a full-size sheet, which is 22 by 30. And I'm going to start by spraying my paper with a little spray bottle. The other day, instead of spraying it, I used my flat brush to apply the water, and I thought, well, why are you doing that? You can just do this. And then what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to kind of even that out real quick. It's a lot faster than trying to keep wetting the whole thing, so, with your brush. Now, with cold pressed paper, a lot of times you'll get a buckling effect, and I've learned to work with that. But if you're a person that isn't sure that that's something you want to learn to deal with, then you could tape it down, or you could staple it to a board. I just learned at a very young age in watercolor that I would never, if I had to staple and stretch my paper every time I wanted to paint, I'd never paint. So I just learned to work with the buckling. And like most watercolors, you usually want to start with your lightest color first. And in this case, I'm going to use just a cadmium yellow. And the thing about yellow that's interesting is that it's considered a sun color, and if you put it down on your paper first and then work on top of it, you'll get more of a glow, because it does tend to be a little bit of a semi-opaque pigment, and if you start putting it on top, that kills your transparency. It makes it a little bit more opaque looking. And so if you want to keep that glow, you want to put your oranges and your yellows and your yellow greens down first, and then let them dry and paint over the top, or work wet into wet. And I'm going to do a little bit of both today. I'm not a real wet into wet person. I consider myself a realist most of the time. But I just decided I was in a new apartment and I wanted to have fun and do something I'd never done, hadn't done in a long time, and so that's when I decided to try some wet into wet. So basically, it is what it is. We're just introducing pigment onto a wet surface, and up in the area where those clouds are, and I was thinking, in the photograph, there's more of a division between the two clouds, and then I adjusted that because I don't want it to look like there's two equally sized. It's almost there, but not quite. I had to go back in and work on it because I didn't want two equal sized shapes on both sides of that tree. In nature, we want to, as human beings, create balance, and we're not real great at doing asymmetrical balance. But in nature, nature's wonderful at asymmetrical balance. So it's creating the feeling of balance without using two identical weights or shapes or sizes opposed to each other. I was watching a thing on feng shui last night, and they were saying that symmetry is real important in your bedroom. And I had just watched another one on decorating a bedroom, and he said, no symmetry. Okay. So then you decide what you like.
You're a rule breaker no matter which way you go.
Exactly. So one of my favorite colors is quinacridone gold, and I use it a lot. I do a lot of fall paintings. Fall is one of my favorite times of year. And the transparency of the quinacridone pigments are really, really, really wonderful. And you're just able to get some really nice glowing effects with that. So I'm just putting in a little bit of that quinacridone gold. It's just a little bit stronger than the yellow. And then what I'm going to do is,
Would it bother you if people got up and,
no, that would be fine, but I don't know what but what I'm going to do is also, I'm going to be moving it around a little bit. So it's up to the video guy.
Oh, yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
That's fine, sure.
I suppose if you came up and around this way, if they wanted to see what I'm doing, is that,
Yeah, that would be optimal.
yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my cobalt blue. Now, I just got done working with my yellow, and the thing you do not want to happen is you do not want that blue and yellow to mix because you get green. So what I'm taking is my cobalt blue, and I'm adding a little bit of quinacridone violet to that. Violet and yellow are complementary colors, and that will really make those yellow clouds at the top pop. So I'm going to come in. I'm actually going to work a little faster because my paper's drying. Overhead light. So I am leaving a little bit of space around some of the yellow. I'm sorry, you guys can't see what I'm doing, huh?
Are you doing wet to wet?
I am.
Yeah.
And just a minute, I will, again, I'm going to do a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that.
I can see why the wrinkles don't bother you. Moving it all around, that's great.
Yeah. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt and make it a little bit bluer and come down. And I'm just going to go over the tree that I drew. But I'm leaving some white kind of lighter areas just to help maintain some sparkle. There's a little bit of that going on in that one. Just a minute and I'll hold it back up again. And I'm going to again, now what happens when you mix violet and then you you have it run into the yellow? Does anybody know?
Mud.
Brown.
what?
Yeah, mud.
Mud. But, you know what? Some mud is beautiful.
Yes.
And in fact, when you mix it this way, what's wonderful, I'm going to actually run this off the paper. Here, just a minute. Let me go like that. So you can kind of see what I've got going there. And I'm actually going to grab a little bit of that gold and I'm going to work it in. Now, some of that blue, it might turn a little bit of a green color in some areas, but I will soften that a little bit with some, just a tiny bit of cat orange. And that will make kind of a gray or an ochre color. Which, if you look in the skies on a sunset, you see such a broad range of beautiful,
That goes back there too.
beautiful colors.
Okay. Yeah. I'll do it later.
Okay, just a minute and I'll hold that up here. I'm going to actually put out a little bit more of that. I just grabbed some more violet, my violet mix. So it's, so I'm gonna hold it up again, let it run. I'm trying to let the colors do their own thing to some degree. So this is kind of where I'm at. Again, don't expect it to turn out exactly like the one up there, because it won't. So I'm going to grab a little bit of orange while this is still wet up there. The way you tell if your paper is wet is if there's a shine, obviously it's wet. But the other thing is if it's not shiny, if it still feels cold or cool, that means it's still damp. And you can still add color. There's an interval that if you added color at a certain point, it might make a bloom. And sometimes those blooms are actually an interesting addition to the painting. And I found myself actually wanting to create some blooming effects for the bottom portions of these clouds the other day. So, for example, let's see if I can do this. If I come down here,
Oh,
it will kind of make a little bit of a, you can kind of see the marks that it's doing. I'm also going to soften that a little bit anyway. And now I've got some things going on there that I don't want, but that's an easy thing to fix. So I'm just going to go back in with my brush after I've taken some of the excess moisture out of it. And the thing, I think it's important to not panic.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, it's just important when you're working wet into wet to take a deep breath and just kind of go with the flow and let it do its thing. And the other handy thing is a paper towel, because what you can do is you can kind of come in and lift a little bit. And you can always put more layers on, which is fine. Okay. So this is kind of where we're at right now.
That's awesome.
And I don't know, you guys ought to invest in one of those mirrors that you put.
that would be good.
Yeah.
We did, yeah.
Because I think that's what they use up at Manly. It's
Yeah.
been a while since I've been up there to do a demo, but.
I think they got rid of their mirror.
Oh, maybe they went to a TV. Didn't we used to have a TV setup where people would watch it on a TV?
And our camera wasn't doing what we wanted it to do. So
I
there was-
remember you fought with that for a
Oh,
long time. Yeah, yeah, but it was nice for people to be able to see it.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to see that back again too.
Good.
Can you get a grant for that, or?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my brush again and re-wetting this bottom portion. The only other thing I can think of doing is there's so few of you, is just having you all come and stand behind me if you wanted to.
Well, I'm going to.
Okay.
Yeah. You do see, I mean, like when you pull the moisture out of the brush,
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I want to see what's going to happen there.
yeah, yeah, it helps. But, so this is the fun part down here, because you get to use all these nice juicy
Ooh, boy.
exploding
Yeah,
colors.
you should watch, this is worth watching.
And I'm gonna grab some ultramarine.
Watch that, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I'm going to grab some more of the violet. Believe it or not, that's how I did that one. I know it looks different. Okay, then
I
I'm
like
like,
that one better.
huh?
I like that one better.
Well, thank you.
Everything's
So,
coming along.
I'm actually gonna throw a little bit of orange in there, a little bit of, let's see, a little bit of quinacridone burnt orange, and then I'm going to let it kind of mix. Actually, what I'm gonna do is take my spray bottle, and this is where it gets messy. So now I've got this wonderful tie-dye effect going on down there, but when that dries, it'll make a great underpainting for the landscape part, for the silhouette. And I'm actually gonna start building up the sky a little bit more. It's still damp, but it's dry enough that I can go in and hopefully avoid too many blooms. And I'm going to,
You don't want the blooms for,
well, at the moment, I may use them, it's one of those things that you want to incorporate, but you want it to be on your terms. And that just comes with figuring out your, you're getting familiar with your paper and your paints and what's going to happen with all of that. And but also be open to accidents, because some really nice things happen, some terrible things happen. And I'm just coming down with some clean water underneath there to soften some of those edges. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it up this way.
I thought you'd go the other way.
I know you thought that, that's why I didn't do that. And
That's
then,
cool.
so. Okay, so I'm not gonna spray. Shouldn't leave my $800 brush in the water.
Yeah.
I was just a college student when I bought those. Some guy came to me
Oh, wow.
and said, "Come over here." He opened up his coat and goes, "I've got some brushes for sale."
Really?
Yeah.
Undercover brush salesman?
Yes. Well, no, I wasn't gonna question.
Yeah?
I wasn't gonna ask where
Yeah, where they came from?
they came from.
Okay.
I mean, starving art student in college, I just knew what I had was good, so
And you knew what he had?
yeah.
Yeah, right. That's cool.
And that was before I decided to be a watercolorist too. So
Maybe that had effect?
I might have, yeah. No, they only offered one watercolor class the whole 4 years I was in college.
Wow.
And, we had to take, there's a hair in there. Cat. My cat. So I'm coming in above here with a little bit more of a warmer, darker, more ominous kind of color. You notice I'm not looking at a picture right now, and it's because I already painted it once with a picture, and I don't want this to turn out exactly the same, so I'm kind of just not freeloading.
Freestyling it.
Yeah,
Yeah, freestyle.
I'm gonna hit it with this bottom part. So the thing about quinacridone colors is that they do stain. So once they dry, it's very difficult to soften edges. Did you have a question? Okay, so it's important to kind of keep an eye on that because I don't want it to become totally dry up there before I can go in and soften some of those shapes. And the way you do that, there's a lot of different ways to do it. The good thing about artistical paper is it does have a tendency to be an easy lifting paper. You can lift most colors off of it, even staining colors to a certain extent. But, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up and catch that edge, and it will change the value of that gold to a little bit lighter color, and it'll also, this is where you might get some of those blooms going back up in there to make it look like clouds. So I'm just softening, and I'm bringing some of that color down just because although this is a lighter area of the cloud, you still want some color there. So over here, I'm coming in. Hmm? Oh.
She said, I can go over.
Yes, join her.
Thank you.
So what I'm doing is I'm just softening that effect and dropping in a little bit of water to kind of get that bubbly, cloudy effect. And now if I get down here where it'll join with that purple, it'll get a little bit of a weird kind of shadowy shape, color. And if you don't like it, you can just go in and you can lift it a little bit, and that'll help soften that effect. So, what am I gonna do down here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a darker color. So what I'm gonna do is take my ultramarine blue and a little bit of dioxazine purple, if I have some. I think that's it. There we go. So I'm going to instead of using tubes. It's cheaper too, actually. I mean, you don't have to have all those extra tubes of color. But one of my best blacks that I make is using brown matter, which is a relatively inexpensive color, and Prussian blue, which is also relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of colors, so. My tree's still running a bit. Just pick up a little bit of those extras. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking my paper towel and I'm just redesigning or reclaiming some of those negative spaces between the branches. And I may have to go back in and do a little bit more of the trunk up there again, but that's okay. So, yeah, so what I'll probably end up doing is going back in a little bit later and doing a little bit more work on the tree.
Oh, yeah. Really nice. Yeah, that was nice.
Oops.
Let me grab it.
Sure.
At least you didn't land
Hopefully it
upside
didn't
down.
fall on the.
Yeah,
Yeah, what came up, face up.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, anyway,
Awesome, yeah. Very nice.
and it's not done, but it's close.
Mhm.
I do a little bit more work on the clouds up there and some more work maybe on the tree for sure. But I'm actually really enjoying what's happening in the sky down here. Actually, what I would probably do is take a little bit of that purpley color and maybe come down
Ooh, yeah.
and just actually it's let me do this. While it's wet, I would just put some other colors like the gold or the burnt orange and float it in with that blue, which makes a tertiary color, but it's a nice rich color. And I'm actually gonna do a little bit of this up here, I think. I'll probably do more up in there too. How late am I supposed to go? Forever?
As long as you're able.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I can remember when my painting sessions could go all day, but I'm finding that it's more important especially if you're just starting out, to make yourself get up and walk around. Believe me, it makes a difference later on in life. Being sedentary isn't the greatest thing. And being an artist is a pretty sedentary thing. So, thing about this little area up in here, up above the center part of this yellow bank of clouds at the top, is you don't want it to look like you're dividing it right in the center. So you got to kind of play with it until you feel like you've managed kind of a natural look, but that doesn't just look like you're dividing them into two boobies or something.
There you go.
Anyway, for now, I'm gonna keep working on it and make a mess out of it. So that's the other important thing, is to realize that you can stop at some point. And it's actually better because then you can go back at another day or later in the day and you can see all the things that need to be fixed. So the tree itself is getting drier, so I'm actually going to, let's see, go in with, and just drop a little bit more. That should be wet enough that it'll spread out a bit. Maybe not. There's just some things you have to wait until it dries properly in order to go back in and really, really deal with it. I'll tell you, watercolors has really taught me there's a time for moving quickly and working while you have that moment that you have to work, but then there's times when you just have to be patient and let your paper dry and the paints dry. Because paints, they change when they dry. The pigments look lighter, they look different. The paper does different things when it dries, so it's just, you don't want to get too caught up in doing the detail work, but at the same time, you don't want to completely lose everything either. So anyway, for now that's fun. I'm getting impatient, I can tell.
Have you ever painted with your opposite hand?
With my what?
With your other hand?
You know, I'm usually pretty ambidextrous. That's a word. Ambidextrous. Yeah, I'm pretty ambidextrous, but when I'm demonstrating, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, only when you're kind of playing around.
Right, or if my hand is really, I noticed that my hand was having some issues last year, and I couldn't even hold the brush, it would fall out of my hand. So yeah, I was kind of forced to do something different. Thank goodness for one of those hot wax things that you, a friend of mine's a physical therapist, and she gave that to me, and it really helped. So I'm going to call it good for right now, because there's not a lot I can do to it without ruining it at this point. So it still needs quite a bit.
It's to give this approval too.
Well, that was exciting. I can't wait to get my paints out.
Oh, good. Thank you very much for coming and doing this. It was great.
You're welcome.
Very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
I missed the whole thing.